Hi everyone, I'm Francois. We're at the tail end of my series of G-Shock reviews, and only two are left to be reviewed, one of which is right here. This one has a personal significance for me, so let's get right into it because it's time to watch. As you already know, G-Shock came on the market in 1983, but they came out with the analog versions in 1989. This one here is an analog pure version in a sense that when they came out with the 1989 version, it was both analog and digital. As you can notice here, you only have hands giving you the time, and it's a modern version of a classic look with the hands set. That's what I like about these G-Shocks. It's the classic look of a standard three-hand watch, but with a modern twist. Let's talk about the modern twist. I'll go through the different specifications, and I'll look at the watch itself, physical characteristics, give you my impressions. I'll put it on my wrist and we'll close it up. In the intro, I was telling you that this watch had significance for me. If I backtrack a couple of years, I started looking at watches a little more seriously. I knew that I always liked watches, but I was a little more curious and looking more into watches, and this one caught my eye. It's a little over the budget I typically put on watches, but I was turning 50 not long after. So I said to myself, you only live once. I'll buy myself a nice watch for my 50th anniversary of being on this earth. And so that's what I did. I encourage you to do the same. Buy yourself a nice watch for a specific occasion. Every time you have it on your wrist, you'll be reminded of that time. So let's get right into the measurements themselves, and then we'll be talking about the watch. This one has a diameter of 51.7 millimeters, a lug-to-lug of 55.8 millimeters, and 14.4 millimeters thick, and it's a total weight of 124 grams. I'll go through the different functions rapidly because there's a lot of stuff going on in this watch. And so that might be part of a separate tutorial. So let's get in closer. A few things stood out to me about this watch is the color, that red accent that comes out, that is part of the strap and the case as well. The fact that it has a nice three-dimensional look to him, to the hour markers, the sub dials as well, and the logo, the MT-G logo, that is basically an applied logo with the printed Casio at the bottom, and those hands really stand out. You can see them really well off the darker watch dial. The hands themselves are kind of sword-like hands that have lume on them, as well as the lume on the different hour markers at the top of the hour markers. I'll show you I'll drop an image of the lume itself. So I'll show you the light when you press here. I'll go through the other buttons, of course, but just wanted to show you how it fades in and then it fades out. So you can kind of see it on this here, but I'll also show a few images separately. So this is the light button. You have a screw down crown, which is not usual for a G-Shock. And what's specific about this here is when you screw it out, it's not like the Master of G, the Mudmaster I previously reviewed, which basically here when you unscrew it, it had a red identifier where you would basically see that it's unscrewed, and you wouldn't forget it because you want to make sure that you have that full capability of 200-meter water resistance. You can screw it on really well, screw it off because of the knurling that you have here. It's kind of grippy as well, so it really screws and unscrews well. You have this button here where it's basically said receiving. It's because this is a connected watch where you can receive information, time information, or the timestamp from the different antennas throughout the world. There are 6 antennas throughout the world, 1 in the US, 2 in Europe, 2 in Japan, and 1 in China. And the other button right here is the mode button, where you can go through the different modes from this subdial where you have here. You'll notice that there's no button right here. So there's only 3 buttons that operate this watch. So now that we've seen the different markings for the different functions, you have the inner bezel where you see the different cities for your different time zones. So when you adjust your watch as well as the second time zone, your second hand will point to the time zone. And in my case here, it's NYC that you see on the left there. You have the 24-hour subdial at the top at noon with that red circle that defines that subdial. A nice touch. You have at the 9 o'clock the different subdials, the different functions that you can see. You have the days of the week, you have the battery indication, and you have the different modes that I will go through quickly in a few seconds. And at the bottom, at the 6 o'clock, you have that second time zone where you can adjust the time separately. Let's now go through the different markings on the outer edge. You might have already noticed the date window right here that gives another 3D look with that same colored date wheel. You have the NY here, which when you have a reception of the time signal, the second hand will point to either yes or no if you received it or not. You have the on-off here that is for the alarm. You have the minute track that is clearly identified out here on the outer edge. And here it's a bit hidden, but you have the Bluetooth logo right there that indicates that you are receiving the Bluetooth signal. And lastly, you have the RC right there, which basically tells you that you are receiving the time signal. Now that we've seen all the markings on the watch, what covers it all is a nice sapphire crystal. You'll notice the bezel itself is IP coated, so that ion plating is blackened, and you can clearly see the markings for the cities, and that ion plating is also reflected on the back. So let's go to the case back right away. You see the markings on the case back. You see that shock resist 20 bar. It's the Casio. It's the module 5544. It's the MT-G B1000 watch. That's the model. It's a stainless steel back, and that's what I was telling you in regards to the stainless steel is IP coated, so that gives that black look. You have the indication that it's a sapphire crystal at the bottom, and it's tough solar. It's a tough movement. The tough movement being the fact that G-Shock came out with the very first handset that has a rugged look and feel to it and is able to take a beating, even if it's a handset as opposed to being a digital watch. It's a multi-band 6, which basically are the antennas I was talking to you about earlier. And you have that Bluetooth logo indicating that it's Bluetooth connected. And in white, you have all these markings in white. Basically, it's just the indication that this is compliant to all the different types of communications with the antennas, the Bluetooth connectivity as well. The watch back here, the case back, is screwed in to get the full resistance of 200 meters. And you have that tough movement in this case. The tough movement, if you see the center logo, is basically that triple G resist. It would basically mean that this is a shock resist, vibration resist, as well as centrifugal resist. Everything about this watch indicates that it's built tough, including the strap. The strap here is also IP coated on the hardware right here. You can unscrew and change the strap if needed. The hardware on the buckle and on the keeper also IP coated. This is a signed keeper, and this buckle also is signed with the Casio brand. I like the touch that the fact they had this IP coated as well. And what's nice about this is that it adds balance between the watch head that is relatively heavy because of the resin and combination of metal, but this here, the hardware balances it out once it's on your wrist. You don't see any markings on the strap itself. It's simple. You have this texture right here. The only markings you see are the ones about the strap, how it's built, I figure. And also there's kind of a finish, a soft finish to it, so that it adds to the comfort. The fact that it curves down directly to hug your wrist, the fact that you have this kind of soft finish makes it so that this watch is really comfortable, on top of being balanced with the hardware that's being added at the buckle. Now that we've looked at the physical characteristics of the watch, let's go through the functions themselves. You have the modes here that are represented in this subdial at 9 o'clock. You have the light that I already showed you, and you have this receiving button right here. If you look at the second hand that's ticking, if you press here, it will basically show you if you received or not the time setting for the different antennas. So that's why it's important to set this at the right time zone for your local area, because what this watch will do is it will synchronize with the time clock that is in your area. As I said, in the US there's one, in Europe there are 2 antennas, in Japan there are 2 others, and 1 in China. So let's go directly to the mode button. The mode button operates this here. This arrow will point to the different modes, and the very first mode here, I'll just get a closer look and we'll see them closer. I'll press on the mode button and look at that arrow going through the different functions. Now it's currently the standard, I would say, normal timekeeping, and it always points to the day of the week. In this case here, it's Sunday. When you press once, it's the stopwatch. The stopwatch, as you see here, it's going to point at midnight to have the timekeeping of the minutes. Here, you operate it by pressing start, and your second hand will start counting the seconds, and every minute this here will count a minute forward. Then you stop it, you reset it with this button here, and there you go. Then you press on TR, which is the timer, and you notice that this here has been reset to 12:15. Essentially, it's basically saying you have a 15-minute countdown. And of course, you can set this using the crown. So you unscrew the crown, you take one position out, and when you turn it one way or the other to set your timer. It's the same operation. You just start with this button here, and you notice the second hand is going backward because it's a countdown. Then you press the stop and you reinitialize here. Then you have the alarm. The alarm will adjust to the time right here at the subdial at the 6 o'clock. It's now 5:45 a.m. You have the AM PM indication right there. And you see here the second hand is pointing to the off button. So this alarm is now off, and you can toggle with this button here to on and bring it back to off. And of course, like I said earlier, you can adjust it by unscrewing this crown and adjusting your time accordingly. Then it goes back to the normal timekeeping, but it shows you temporarily what your battery level is. And then it goes back to the normal timekeeping. If you're anywhere in the different functions and you want to go quickly back to the normal timekeeping, you just press long time and there you go. It goes back to the normal timekeeping. If you want to adjust the watch, I won't go through the different functions. This will be part of another tutorial, but in the normal timekeeping, when you unscrew here and you have one position out, you're adjusting your second time zone. If you're two positions out, you adjust your normal timekeeping. So that's about it for the functions of this watch. Now I'll put it on my wrist and then we'll conclude this video. But before I put this one on, I have to take this one off. This is my very last review, G-Shock review, and it's another watch that has a certain significance for me, and I can't wait to show it to you. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. It's a larger watch, not for all the wrists, but it hugs well right here. It's well balanced with the hardware. It looks really good. I really like this watch. I hope you like these types of reviews, and press that like button, of course. Leave me a comment. Do you have this watch, and do you like it as much as I do? If, of course, you subscribe to my channel, don't hesitate. Press that notification bell, and you'll be notified of all my upcoming reviews. My next review being this one. This concludes this review. I truly appreciate you tuning in and hope to see you next time.